Hi everyone. Um, Today I'm going to talk about something a little bit serious. I can be, you know me, I can be a bit of a joker and a bit flippant, but I'm trying to do something different today, a little bit more serious. John and I, downsized about 15 months ago from a 3-bed detached with a garage and a front and back garden into this 1-bed flat. And I know, well, you appreciate that from comments from friends and things that we've seen on YouTube, that downsizing it seems to be a big issue for a lot of people. We know people who'll say, I wouldn't do it. I couldn't manage with that small space. And I have people who go, do you know, I really think I want to do it. I really think I need to do it, but I wouldn't know where to start. So I think tackling this, seeing as we had the experience of having done it, just thought I might talk through some of the things that we did, some of the things that influenced our decision, and that's just in this video. Will make a series of these about different aspects of it, storage, etc. But I think this one's just going to be about our decision and what made us do it. And I've got some notes down here and I'm going to look down. I know if I'm going to be really professional I should have a script written out, but I'm not that polished professional, and sometimes things just come in your mind as you go along. And I'm also, just bear with me while I put my phone on silent. I'm running a clock here as well, just so that I don't ramble for too long. So we are 65 and 60, about to be 67, and we've been married 40 years. So we've been very fortunate, always had our own property. It was one thing that was, put on by our parents and family, try and get a house. So we lived in the first house, which was 3 bedrooms, and again that was due to my brother. He said he had the same type of house as us, but he had a 2-bedroom, and then when he had his second child they had to sell for a bigger house, and he said, whatever you do, try and get 3 bedrooms, because then you should be okay. So our first bedroom, it was only a small, humble, quasi-semi, 3 bedrooms, and that's what we had. And we lived in that for 30 years. And then I retired as a nurse. We were getting to the point where the area wasn't suitable for us any longer, so we wanted to move. And with my with the lump sum that I got, I worked for the NHS. I was a nurse for full time for nearly 40 years. So we used some of that money rather than just like sitting in the bank. We used it. We were already planning on moving house, and so we got ourselves a bigger house. And we got a 3-bed detached with the garage, the ensuite and the gardens and that, and it was absolutely beautiful. But then we made the decision to downsize. The plan was to downsize to a 2-bed flat, and we were in the process of buying one in this particular block, and I'll come back to the decision to where we are now in this. But our vendor was a bit tricky. And at the 11th hour, after 7 months, he then pulled out and said he wasn't selling and wasn't moving. And the person who was buying our house had already completed 4 days before and moved out of his property. So we had to make a quick decision. So luckily, there was this 1-bed flat that was available in the same vicinity. So this is what we bought. Filled me with dread. I didn't know how I was going to live in a 1-bedroom flat, because I don't travel light through life, let me tell you, I don't. Anyway, it's all worked out well in the end, and that'll be another story for another day. I've always got another story for another day. But so I'll just tell you now why we downsized in the first place. So I've got to say, I also have a brew as well. If you'd like to get a brew yourself, please do. Many of our decisions have been based on experiences of our we both had widowed mothers, and I think we always knew from our 30s, maybe late 30s, 40s, that we always said we will go into a flat, maybe a sheltered, over 50s retirement property, but we always said we'd go into a flat. And so we had our mothers were both widowed, and they both did things very differently. And by watching the 2 experiences, that's what made us make our decision. So let's start with my mum. my mum was widowed young, long before, she was a lot younger than when John's mum was widowed. Anyway, my mum was widowed young, and she struggled a bit. She had to downsize because we had a bigger house, one thing and another. But she struggled on in her house, and she probably didn't really have enough money. She was never very happy. She was never felt she had any money, never had any holidays, never really did anything. Life was a bit miserable for her one way and another. She was a difficult person anyway. That's by the by. She wasn't easy, but she was difficult. And anyway, it ended in the end that she was found on the floor by my brother, and she'd had a fall, and she ended up in hospital. She had a fractured hip, one thing and another. And it turned out that she was getting dementia. Now, not like Alzheimer's, but it was just what they call sort of classic memory loss dementia. So she knew us, she knew everybody, but obviously a short-term memory had gone, and she wasn't really seeing the full picture. Now, she went into hospital, and it was very clear she couldn't stay in that house any longer, and we had to sell it, and she needed to go into a retirement home probably, and she probably needed nursing care. Both of us were working full time. We had careers. It wasn't anything we could do. Plus, she wasn't really safe to be left on her own, because she would be going out in the middle of the night. Like I say, she had no sort of concept of time, and she always had a bit of an obsession of going to the shops, and she always wanted to go out shopping, and she would just be out. Anyway, so that was difficult. So we had to find her a property, which we did, with no help from social services. They weren't helpful at all. Anyway, we got her in somewhere, and talking about the not being safe, she even got out of there. I was at work once, and my neighbour rang me and she said, "I think I've got your mum here," and it was a snowy day. She said she's here in the slippers and a cardigan. She'd obviously come to our house. And then she was once brought in a car by somebody and said, "Is this your mother? Because she seems to know your house." So she'd get out of the nursing home, and it wasn't a secure place, and they did everything they could. They put a bolt on, raised it, but she'd still find a way out. She was like Houdini, my mum. But anyway, so that was clear. She had to go somewhere where she could be seen. She could still get out with then, but in the end, it solved it. So that was that, and it was tricky. And we had to then sell her property to pay for her care fees. Social services were hounding us over it. But the other thing is, when we cleared her house out, myself, my brother and my sister-in-law, it was tragic, but it was also comical at the same time. The things we found that she had in the house, an example is we'd found like a little spoon out of the old ice cream tub. She'd have them. We found broken false teeth. We found, honestly, things, and some things were not hygienic that we found. So that was a nightmare, and it was really, really difficult. The whole process of that took about a year, and it had a bit of an impact on my, health, mental health and everything. So that was a nightmare. And so she was in this, and then till she eventually had a stroke and passed away. So that was her experience, and it was not pleasant, and it's not something you'd wish on anybody. Now, John's mum also did have a tragic end, but she made the decision herself. She also had a 3-bed house, and she made the decision to go into an over 55s and a retirement property. And she moved into somewhere, and it was really nice, and she got herself a little bungalow where there was a warden, and she had this small 1-bed bungalow, and she was really, really happy. She sorted out her finances. She had all the finances sorted. She was in a place that was safe. It had a local doctor's, the chemist, everything, the church, and it was easy. Now, she did eventually end up going into a nursing care because she got vascular dementia, and that was very difficult because she didn't recognise John or the family. That was really difficult in its own way. But the process of moving her and getting her care and then settling everything and her belongings and everything was so much simpler. She thought it through herself, and it was easier on the family and everybody. So that was something that we always said, we want to go down the route of my mother-in-law's and not the route of my mother and just leave it to everybody else. So that was always on the back of our minds why we did it. And then the timing of it, I think when we bought the big detached when I retired, I think we always knew that was always just a bit of stopgap and we were still going to go into a flat. But the timing of it, I think, John had lost his brother at 66, and then my brother sadly got sick and passed away a lot younger, many years than we expected. And I think that made the decision. I think, like, John went, do you know what? I just think we need to sort of sell up, move, and one of the things would be financial security, etc. And that was sort of starting the thoughts in our head. And then he was diagnosed with a health condition, which I've got to say he's in good health at the moment, because the treatment we've had, the NHS, has been absolutely fantastic. And due to, sort of medication and things like that, and surveillance and monitoring, he's in a good condition, very good place. But he's not quite as fit and able as he used to be. I've now got chronic back problem and everything. I'm not. And I think John then started to think a little bit and thought, well, he was probably thinking if he went before me, he wanted to know that he'd leave me in somewhere that was safe, secure, easy to manage. And likewise, I felt the same thing. We needed to sort of future-proof. And now the big thing around all of this, which I'm going to cough, I'm just going to have a drink. One of the really big things about all this is we don't have any children. Maybe that made the decision easier, I don't know, compared to what people have said to us. We don't have any children. It was a lifestyle choice. That's fine. We didn't. And so we didn't want to leave. We wanted to try and think for ourselves. We're very close to nephews and nieces, very, very close. And one's nominated as our the executor in our will and everything, and they know what we want and everything, but we're not their responsibility. They will do it out of love, but we don't have any dependents. So that does make it a little bit easier, but it also influences our decision why we had to be responsible for our future, really. Because we don't know whether there's anybody else to try and look after you. So rather, I suppose, to start it, that one of the reasons then, it was all based on health, wealth, happiness, some of the main things about life, and we just wanted to aim to future-proof our life. So health-wise, we've already said, my husband knows he's got a chronic condition. I've got, generalised osteoarthritis. Mine's not going to get any better. And so health was one of the reasons. So, like I say, we had a house, we had a garden, 3 bedrooms, dining room, everything. It all needed looking after. And the garden was a joy. We loved it. Beautiful area, but it also took a lot of work to maintain. And it was getting more and more difficult. Sorry, I took a slight pause then because it was a knock at the door. Right, so yeah, the garden was absolutely beautiful, but it was a lot of work. And although it gave us something to do, and during the time of lockdown, I don't know what we'd have done without it, but it was a lot of work. And we live in Manchester. Let's face it, we don't live in the sunny south, we live in Manchester. And for the amount of work in that garden, we worked out that one summer I think we only sat outside 7 times, 7 days, because it's awful. It rains a lot, it's grey, we have to be trying to be sun cracking the flags really for us to enjoy a full day in the garden. So yeah, so that was it. That was hard. It takes maintenance, doesn't it? Keep the house, the bills, keeping it warm. Although we weren't struggling financially. We're very grateful that we were quite comfortable. But that was one reason. It was the health-wise, the moving, the stairs. The bathroom and everything was upstairs. We were better with one level living. Wealth-wise, we thought, well, if we do downsize and sell, then we are financially secure then, really, for whatever the future brings. We're not absolute millionaires or anything like that, but, we we can pay our bills, we can have a couple of holidays, and you know, that was another reason. The other reason for the flat as well is that we've got very little responsibilities. There's a general maintenance. We're not responsible for the roof, many of the things. It's insured. The window cleanings is part of our maintenance charge. There's beautiful gardens. We don't have to do anything about the gardens. You can go out and garden and plant if you want to, but you don't have to. Some people do that because that's something they like to do. But otherwise, beautiful garden, somewhere to sit. So we've got all that. We don't have to do anything about it. One floor living, no stairs. We do have stairs up to the flat. You know, we haven't got a ground floor flat. We've only got 2 flights of stairs, but we're only doing it once, twice a day at the most. It's not like every time you need to go up and down to the loo or get something from the bedroom. So that was it. Well, we knew it'd be financially secure. It'd be easy to keep for one of us on our own, because obviously income drops if you're always one of you on your own. So we knew we were future proof that one of us would be able to keep it. Happiness, because we're very happy people, you know, very happy people, and we don't really gain our happiness on what we live in. As long as we're clean and safe, we're quite happy. We're quite happy people, you know. We don't need the status of the big house, etc., to prove our value to life. You know, we were just happy as we are in that. So happiness was one of it. No need to worry. You wouldn't have to worry if one of you got ill about the other person, because we'd hope that we'd had the forward thinking to prepare. And that sounds a bit, I don't know, I think that sounds a bit negative sometimes. People think, oh, you can't think like that. Well, you can. If you've seen our mothers, you know what happened, then it's awful, isn't it? I mean, like I say, we're just trying to aim to, our decision was to help us to future-proof our lives, so that if anything happened, one of us was left widowed, then the other one was in a property that no matter how you're feeling, you're absolutely devastated. We've seen people who are devastated and then they've still got the trauma of, like, we know a friend at the moment who everything depended on the husband, the job, everything. The property was part of their lifestyle and everything. And you know what? Not only has she got the trauma of having lost her husband, she's now got what we're going to do, where we're going to live, everything like that. It's difficult, you know. Bereavements at the best of times, so we're trying to at least, God forbid one of us probably will be at some point. That's the only thing that's certain in life, is that, yeah, life's going to be hard enough, but we don't have to worry about where we live. We know that we're safe, we're financially secure, we don't have to worry about anything like that. We've just got to try and get ourselves bodily and soul through that grief period. So that was one of the reasons. Like I say, we don't have children, so, you know, I think, I don't know whether it makes it easier or not, but I know other people we know who've not downsized yet, who think about it. We have got a sort of family where out of the marriage, one would move and one would downsize and one wouldn't, and it's difficult. And I have to say, you've both got to be on the same page. I think you've both got to be at that point together, which we're very fortunate that we are. We are very talkative to each other, very open. We're very lucky, we're nearly always on the same page. Not always. I have to say, we're not one of these perfects who go, oh, never had a crossword in 40 years. Oh, let me tell you, we have. But for bigger things, you know, we usually argue over stupid things, but bigger things, you know, we tend to think things through. And I think people who've got children have said, well, I need an extra bedroom, or I need this. What if one of my children marriage breaks up, or they come back, or what if I've got grandchildren to stay, or everything like that. We don't have that in the equation, and whether that makes that easier, I don't know. But I don't know, does it? You know, but I also know a lot of people that we've got, neighbours who've got children and they've got grandchildren, and they're still living in the same property as us, because they've just said, well, that's the way it is. This is what we want to do for us. You know, our family, our children and that are all sorted. They've got their own homes, they've got their own, you know, their children, grandchildren, and they said, you know, we've done our bit, and now this is something for us. So it depends which side of the fence you sit on, whether, you know, it would influence you or not. And then we have a lot of friends and people who go, oh, I don't know, I couldn't manage with all the space. Look at all my belongings. I've lived here all these years. It's got the memories. you know, I've got all my treasure in here, and you know, what am I going to do about it? And yeah, I can see that point of view, and I'm somebody, like I said, I don't travel light, and I do have a lot of things, but you have to look at things a different way. Now again, it's how you are influenced by what your previous experience has been. Now, we went in my mum's house to clean it out. Honest to God, like you say, some of it was, I'm sure if she could see us having to sort through it all, and she'd be thinking, oh my God, I can't believe, you know, they're going to look through that, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. And I said at the time, now I'm not perfect on this, but I said at the time when we were cleaning it up, I said, God forbid, when it's my turn to go, I want somebody who comes in to go, oh, didn't you have some lovely things? Isn't the place lovely and organised? And oh, she had such beauty, you know, she has such beautiful things. Not, oh, for God's sake, why she kept that? You know, oh, she's not got that. I don't want it to be like that. You know what I mean? So that was another thing that helped us, you know, look about the future proof of not having too many possessions. The bit about memories. Memories are here. Memories are here in your heart, they're in your head, they're in your heart. Wherever you go, they go with you. You know, and I think sometimes a lot's put on to possessions and what you own. I mean, you've only got me. No matter how much money I earn, I spent it. We should be millionaires, because we should have saved a hell of a lot more. I'm shoes, handbags, makeup, clothes, holidays, travelling, meals out. Oh yeah, I can spend a lot. No matter how much I earn, I could spend it. But I think sometimes lockdown made you look at it differently. You think, you know, all them shoes and handbags and all them little bits and knickknacks and that, what did they do for me when we couldn't do anything else? Absolutely nothing. They weren't the valuable things in life. The valuable things in life were the people you were with. You know, like John and you know, all these other possessions and stuff that you'd hoarded in the house, they would have no benefit to you whatsoever. So you start to think about that. There are many ways what you can do to deal with very sentimental things, and I will cover that again. But I think you just learn to, I don't know, you learn to look and be a bit more minimalistic, and you don't need half the things you think you need. And maybe we're forward thinking. We've had a lot of things happen to him. My dad died when I was very young. John's father was killed tragically. And whether it just shapes us really, that you do know that there's a dark side out there, there's darkness, and you try to think forward all the time for make things, you know, better for you. So I thought I'd never lived in a one bed flat, and here I am 15 months later. Yes, it builds up a bit. If you'll have seen one of my earlier videos, I showed the desk that I have in the bedroom. It gets cluttered. You know, there are some issues with storage, things, basic things like where do you put your ironing, where do you put your dirty washing and that. But these are things you can get round, and you can and we'll cover later on. But this is why we made our decision to down plan. And I don't want you to think we sound like we're dead miserable, but these were things that factored it and why we made the decision. And the other thing is, as well as happiness, peace of mind. Now, you have a house. We had patio doors, you had the windows, you whatever, you go on holiday, you know, and I don't know if everybody thinks the same thing, but I know John's quite security, safety conscious. And then, you know, when you're coming back from the airport, you think, oh, next thing, I hope the house is all right, I hope the house is safe, you know, you don't want a burglary, or if you're living on your own eventually, you know, you want to feel secure, you know, what if somebody's prowling around outside and things like that, because it does happen. I mean, we had people, there had been prowlers, you know, at night, you know, we'd had alarms go off, and people who had, now with the new Ring doorbells, they'd say, oh, there was somebody walking around the cul-de-sac. So there's all that. So now with this, we don't have any security worries. We have, this is made up of 5 blocks where we are. There's only 41 properties, 9 to a block, and they're all sort of interlinked, but because there's 5 blocks, there's 5 front doors. So we have a front door downstairs, security locked, security access, there are cameras everywhere, and then we come up the stairs and we've got our front door. So when this is part of the reason as well, we think, well, you know, if we want to go away or whatever, we don't have to worry. We just shut that door behind us, go out. We don't have to worry about any security issues, any safety. You know, we don't worry about anybody coming in during the night, or we just don't have any stress or any worries like that. Again, it's about happiness, and it's about like just health and well-being, and so that was one reason. Security, safety, one of the reasons. We don't have to worry. We can go away often as we want. You know, we just think, should we get in the car? Should we go, I don't know, should we go over to St Anne's for a night? Well, yeah, let's put a few things in the bag, shut the door, go. No worries about anything like that. So there is a lot of that. We don't have to worry about the property. We don't have to worry that anybody's going to break in when we're not here. I mean, never say never. God knows, you never know. But I mean, the chances are it's much less in this than, you know, looking after your own house. So I think that's part of, you know, why we did it. And, you know, we're really happy here. Like I say, I don't miss all those belongings. I mean, I still have quite a lot. You know, we have to have a lot. We had to build in a lot of storage. We were originally having a 2-bedroom, as I said, and it came down as a 1-bedroom. So that was that. And, excuse me, where to live is part of the decision. Where to live is part of the decision, and I think you have to do your research and your due diligence. I've had somebody comment on one of my videos and said, I'd like to go into one of these, you know, more secure, more for the elderly, but what I've known people who've gone and they don't like the neighbours and things like that. Now I have to say, this where we live isn't for senior people. It isn't for over 55s or anything like that, but we knew that it tends to be the age range of people who live in the block. Having said that, we bought it off a young lady who was probably 30, but a lot of people are our age who are in these places for the same decisions. They wanted to downsize. They wanted somewhere that was a lot simpler. So we found this, actually. I keep going back to lockdown, and I don't mean to do that, but when it was locked down and we had like a circuit we used to walk on, and when we were on one of our walks, saw the entrance to this. It's quite secluded. It's on a busy road, but it's quite secluded and it's quite hidden. And I remember saying to John, what that is over there. So we had a look at it and thought, God, that looks really nice. And then, you know me, I'm the queen of Google. You might not know that yet, but I'm the queen of Google. So I was looking up at the property, looking up at the name of it and everything. And I sort of did a bit of research about it. And then I just discovered a lot about it. I looked at properties that had been for sale. I had a look at, I could see from what they were like inside. I actually had, I hate to say this, but I actually had a folder on my laptop for this place. And I'd monitor what was for sale, etc. And looking back over like Zoopla, the historical sales. And I found out a lot of it is that as well that there is a clause in the lease that they can't be sublet. So that we found quite reassuring, because you don't want to think that, you know, you've got neighbours that are somebody just buys it for an investment purpose and they don't really bother who's living in it. So we knew we wouldn't have that worry. You then become part of the management. You become a shareholder in the management committee, i.e., which is the buildings. You become a shareholder in that. There is a management committee. There are covenants. There are some guidelines. You know, about rubbish. You know, what you can't put, like washing from your window, sort of base. You know, things like that really. Now some people would say, I don't want to be in a place where I've got these rules and regulations. We did, because we thought, well, it means there's a standard. There is a minimum standard of what your residents, your neighbours and everybody have to do. You know, very little noise after 9 o'clock at night. You know, wild parties, etc. We do get together and we do meet each other and that. We have a few drinks. A couple of the ladies will all get together and that. It's not like a convent, but you know, there are standards, and we felt reassured by that as well. We felt reassured that people were like, it looked like most people were of a similar age. It had adequate car parking, and there is the facility for a garage at just £12 a month, and a separate storage room for £6 a month. But sadly, there's not enough storage rooms for all the flats, and we're still waiting for one. I will be the happiest woman on earth when I get this storage room. They're internally within the building, and so they're clean, dry, well looked after. I'd just be better when I have one of them for things like Christmas decorations, because, you know, that's the little bits and bobs, suitcases, things like that, we manage. And you have to really think about it. But if we get that little bit of extra storage, but a lot of the neighbours have them, and they're great. So that's something that we know that will come. That is going to come within this block. So it was a lot of homework about doing that. We weren't against going into an over 55s property and sort of maybe buying or renting, but a lot of them had they have quite a high management fee. The management fee for this was reasonable. The council tax was less than we paid before. I'm going to cough again. I keep coughing. Sorry, I have asthma, and it's like a cough variant asthma. I don't wheeze or anything, but I cough, particularly when talking, eating. So I'm so sorry if I keep stopping. So I've absolutely lost my thread and forgot what I was talking about. Yeah, so you have to look. So we weren't against renting, maybe keeping all our capital in the bank. But the management fees were quite expensive. We'd actually looked at going to Lytham St Anne's, and there were some properties that were in our price range and everything. But some of the management fees were £300-400 a month. Well, that's like having another mortgage all over again. So that was we ruled that out at that point. We excluded it, and that's why we stayed, you know, close to where we are, still close to family. We didn't think the fees were expensive. So that's something, though, you have to do research for yourself. You've got to look. I know when somebody said to me, what if I move in one of these places like the over 55s and I don't like the neighbours? That's difficult, but you can get that anywhere you go, can't you? But I know what you're saying if you're in a more closed area. But I think it's about just, there's a bit of luck in life, isn't there? There is a bit of luck in everything, but it is just about doing your homework and everything, and visiting and having a look. So the reason we did find a property that I really liked, and it was in a position we really wanted to live nice in South Manchester, because John's originally from South Manchester, and we couldn't afford over there when we first got married, and it was lovely. But you couldn't have a 2-bed flat. You could only have a 1-bed flat. You could only have a 2-bed unless one of you, in a lot of these over 55s housing places, you can only have a 2-bed if one of you has got a medical need where you need extra equipment, I don't know, like a bed, oxygen, things like that, and we thankfully weren't in that situation. So it was only a 1-bed flat, and so we didn't have it. But the irony of that is now, guess what, we're in a 1-bed flat. So it ruled out that at the time, but the situation then of having this 1-bed was forced on us. Like I say, we'd watched this property, we'd probably watched this for about 2 years, maybe more, probably more, 2-3 years, and we'd visited a couple of them. We had viewed a couple, but we wanted for this 2-bed, like I say, and when the 2-bed came up, and we were going for that, and then sadly, but you know what, again, you say luck and fate. We now actually know that this one is better than the one before. This needed less doing to it. It's probably got a better aspect in the block. We've got a lot of sunshine, more than the other one. So do you know what, I think somebody said, you know, you end up where you're meant to be, and even though it's 1 bed, we're happy with it, and that there is ways to get round it. So I think you've got to make the decision. You probably have a reason why you want to do it. Like I say, ours was experience. This is sort of summarising what we did. You both have to be on the same page, or if it's just one of you, you know, it's a big decision. But do you know, everything in life's a big decision, but I don't think you would regret it. The people we live around now, in the neighbours and that, everyone, we all love where we are. Yeah, you get a little bit of a difference. You get the odd neighbour, you know, or a bit of difference. We sometimes have differences over how some of the communal money's spent, you know, gardens, stuff like that. It's nothing, you know, major. But we are amongst people who are similar to us. We're all got the similar mindset. There's no like Smith and Jones, like, oh, I've got a bigger garden than you, I've had new windows, I've had that. There's none of that. We all just get along together. we've all got the same property, we're all similar age, somebody will always help somebody out, and it's fantastic. It's been the right decision for us. We have never looked back one moment. I mean, sometimes we tend to watch, like a lot of the property programs, like Moving to the Country or whatever, and they go around these houses that 500,000-600,000. You think, oh, I'd love to have one like that. If I had that, I'd do this with the kitchen and that with the thing. And yeah, but that's just a fleeting thing. We are happy, and like you say, you have to look at it. You've both got to be on the same page and do your homework, do your research about it. That about making your decision. Is it the right thing for you? So, like I say, it has been for us. We've moved in, we're with like-minded people, financially secure, we're safe, and we're happy. And a lot of those possessions, it's actually, and I'll say this again and again, and I know I'll say it in future videos when I cover this, it's actually quite liberating having less. It really is, and it's great. We all came in with nothing, and I know we sort of chased things and that, and I did, but I'm no less happy now. In fact, I'm happier because I don't have rooms to decorate. I don't have to be thinking I need to decorate that room, and it's easy. Our life is quite simple. It's not dull, it's not boring at all. We have a lot more freedom to do a lot more things, and it's better. It's probably, we think it's the best thing we ever did, and we don't regret it for 1 minute. So I think I'll wrap it up now because I've probably waffled on for so long and coughed my way through it. So if there's anything you want to ask, just put something in the comments below if it can help you with any decisions, or just ask us anything about it. Yes, it's a big decision, but I don't think you regret it. And I think there's a lot of people, friends of ours who haven't done it have said, do I think we need to do it. I should do it. Yeah. It is what it is, and that's how it's worked for us. So like I say, I will look at other things later about like how do we manage with storage, how do we manage with things that we thought were important. But for now, that was our decision, and so I hope this might have helped somebody, or it might have put somebody off altogether. God, I hope not. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to like, that'd be lovely, and if you'd like to subscribe, that would be absolutely marvellous. And hopefully you might come back to see what else I've got to ramble on about the retirement downsizing thing, because I've got a lot to say on it, because like you say, it's a big experience, and I've been there and seen it, and we've now done it. So hopefully see you all again soon. Thank you very much indeed.